Hello and welcome to another edition of From the Pastor's Heart. We've been looking for the last little bit about the concept of high places, and I want to finish this up today. One of the things that people ask me all the time is that they really try to, what has happened in America? What has happened in our world? Why have things become so bad? Well, I don't think it's all that complicated. I think what's happened is that the people that our nation has, first of all, forsaken God. So Baal has been incredibly effective here in America. But I believe that the reason he did was the same reason he was able to take control and replace Yahweh with the people of God in the Old Testament. And that was because of the high places. Now, the last time we were together, we talked about the high places, especially with Solomon, and what the high places were, and the slippery slope. Well, I'd like to go over just a brief history of the kings of Judah. Now, remember, in the northern kingdom, they were worshiping in the high places, and there was never a time when they were actually serving God. So we're going to leave them alone. I want to take a look at the southern kingdom as far as what was going on there. And so we know that Rehoboam was the son of Solomon. And Rehoboam continued in the path of his father, and that he still worshiped on the high places. He also sacrificed on the high places, and he was not a righteous man, and which of course is the reason why God took the kingdom away from him. And then his son Abijah continued in Rehoboam's sin. And so now we have a couple of generations of people who are walking further and further away from God, but yet they were still worshiping on the high places. They were still, for some that would do Yahweh plus. And so they had the temple where people would go, but they were still worshiping on these high places. And then we have Asa. And Asa is the son of Abijah. And this is what it says about him in 1 Kings chapter 15, verses 9 through 14. It says, in the 20th year of Jeroboam, king of Israel, Asa became king of Judah, and he reigned in Jerusalem for 41 years. His grandmother's name was Maacah, daughter of Abishalom. Now Asa did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, as his father David had done. He expelled the male shrine prostitutes from the land, and he got rid of all the idols his ancestors had made. He even deposed his grandmother Maacah from her position as the queen mother because she made a repulsive image for the worship of Asherah. Asa cut it down and burned it in the Kidron Valley. Although he did not remove the high places, Asa's heart was fully committed to the Lord all his life. So here we have Asa. Asa is starting on the right path. He wants to serve God. He wants to come back to God, but he doesn't get rid of the high places. And so you still have a place where people could, with convenience, they could still be worshiping Yahweh, but that's just a gateway drug into full-blown idolatry. And so we have his son, Jehoshaphat, in 1 Kings chapter 22, verses 41 to 44. It says, Jehoshaphat, the son of Asa, became king of Judah in the 4th year of Ahab, the king of Israel. Jehoshaphat was 35 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem for 25 years. Now his mother's name was Azubah, the daughter of Shilhi. In everything he followed the ways of his father Asa and did not stray from them. He did what was right in the eyes of the Lord. Now catch this. The high places, however, were not removed, and the people continued to offer sacrifices and burn incense there. Jehoshaphat was also at peace with the God of Israel. So Jehoshaphat loved the Lord. There's no question about that. He wanted to serve God, but he allowed the high places. He allowed people to still go with convenience. And even though they were saying they were worshiping Yahweh, but yet you still have people, and he's allowing it for people to just a little bit, just stray from God a little bit. And then you have two wicked kings. You have Jehoram, who married Ahab's daughter and followed in the path of Israel, which was easy to do, and Ahaziah, who was murdered by his mother, Athaliah, the daughter of Ahab, and attempted to wipe out the royal line. but yet God kept Joash alive. So you have two wicked kings who are leading people astray. And I believe the reason they were able to lead people astray was because you had people who were already living in compromise by worshiping on the high places. So you had the leadership who didn't tear them down. And then we have another string. We have Joash in 2 Kings chapter 12, verses 2 and 3. It says, Joash did what was right in the eyes of the Lord all the years of Jehoiada, the priest, instructed him. The high places, however, were not removed, and the people continued to offer sacrifices and burn incense there. So now we're back to compromise. Even though we have a righteous king, he still doesn't have the courage to tear down these high places and have the people do what's right before God. And then we have Amaziah in 2 Kings chapter 14, where it says he did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, but not as his father David had done. In everything he followed the example of his father Joash. The high places, however, were not removed, and the people continued to offer sacrifices and burn incense there. And then we have Azariah, and we had this, the high places. He did what was right. He was following in the path of Amaziah, his father. So he was still serving God. He loved the Lord. But the high places, however, were not removed, and the people continued to offer sacrifices and burn incense there. And then we have Jotham, and he does the same thing. And then we have Ahaz, who was a wicked king. And so he led the people into rebellion against God and into idolatry. And again, we have to ask the reason why. And I believe the reason that this was allowed to happen was because he allowed the people to walk in compromise. And then finally we have Hezekiah, and he was the first one to remove the high places in 2 Kings chapter 18. And so my point is this, folks, is that you can have leadership, and you can have leadership in a church. You can have leadership in the country, just like Judah did. They had kings who loved the Lord. There's no question about that. They wanted to do the right thing. However, they still allowed the compromise. They still allowed people to do just a little bit of rebellion against God and still sacrifice because it was convenient on the high places. And what happened was that led them into idolatry. And I believe that's what we're seeing in our world today. Is I think that we have had too many church leaders and too many pastors who didn't have the courage to tear down the high places of convenience. And so what we do is we allow a little bit of the world to come in. We saw this in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, where at one time we wouldn't even think about having sexual sin in the church. And then all of a sudden, now it's no big deal if we've got people who are living together. We can even have leadership who are. And I actually heard somebody who's a leader at a church once who had no idea that God was not okay with them living with their girlfriend. And so the church has allowed that. And we're seeing that more and more today as the world is getting more and more debased, that now we have people in the church who are making excuses for that. And what's happening is that we're not tearing down the high places. And we need to be like Josiah, who's my favorite king. And Josiah not only tore down the high places, but he desecrated those things to where they would not be able to be used again. But I would tell you this, Josiah was the most hated king in all of Judah. He was a righteous man, and his approval polls were in the trash. Now, why is that? Because he took their convenience away. And so here's my challenge. Here's my challenge for you. If you're at a church and your pastor wants to tear down the high places of convenience, I am begging you to watch his back. Let him know that you are on his side, that you are going to support him, because he's going to go through it. And people are going to get very angry because we don't like to have our comfort taken away. But folks, it's that bit of convenience and that bit of comfort that we had that just has us do a little bit outside of what God wants us to do. After all, it's just a little bit. We want to show love. We want to do this. We want to be liked. All of these things, which in and of themselves are not wrong. But if they are actually going before the high places, where that's going to lead is into rebellion and ultimately into idolatry. And so the good news is that we can tear down the high places. We can worship God the way that he wants us to do it. We can obey him and do exactly what he wants. And there are godly pastors out there who are calling their people, and some of them are afraid. What's going to happen if I actually call people back to righteousness? And so I'm asking you to let your pastor know that you're on their side, on his side, that you will back him up, that you will continue to pray for him, because as the world gets worse and worse and worse, the pressure that we're going to have to conform to the image of this world is going to be more and more and stronger and stronger. And pastors need to know that they're not alone. And just on a personal note here, I just want to thank that I have been blessed in my life. I've been a pastor of 3 different churches, and in every one of them, I had people who watched my back, who had no problem with my lack of tact, and so on. And I am extremely blessed where I am right now. I've got some of the greatest elders I've ever worked with. I've got an incredible church who I know is praying for me and who wants me to actually preach the word. I am blessed. I know that I am not, that my experience is not the norm. And so please let your pastor know that for me, and make sure that you are walking and you're not worshiping on the high places, that you're actually doing what God has called you to do, not taking the easy way out, gathering together on Sunday mornings. And so as you gather with your siblings in Christ this Sunday, I pray that you have an incredible time in God's presence. And I look forward to seeing you again in a future video. God bless y'all.